Welcome to What Are You Even Talking About? The podcast where we talk a little bit about everything. I am your host, the Nomothete. The podcast. Welcome to the show.
It's the leader of evolution. Best mistakes I've ever made was letting my now wife back in 2012 leave me.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Deep.
That is deep. That was more that was bargaining for that one. Especially I just had a breakup myself about like the end of last year. So I feel you on that one. Oof. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we want to start back to even the question you had, back in around 2012 in 2012. I won't go any further back than that because we could be on here all day. But my wife left me. I was, not going to say a heavy drinker, but I had this fear of I wanted to be seen and heard by the people around me. And so I was always the one that would go out with friends, throw parties, try to find ways to have people like me. I was very big into that aspect. And, I tended to use alcohol as kind of a crutch. I ended up, when my wife actually left me, it was the first time, in my life that it was a rebrand period for myself, right? I had to look at myself and say, hey, if I am going to be in a relationship in the future, like not even if it was my now wife, it was somebody else, could this be sustainable with who I am and how I'm acting for myself now? And it kind of put me on a path towards and there was things before that that kind of helped push me a certain way, but this one in particular actually pushed me to start looking at myself more, right? I started working out and going to the gym and boxing and running and putting more activities back into my life that I had more control over, which actually helped me get to the root of the cause of why I was doing that to begin with, which was my anxiety. And not having a sense of control over certain things. And so that was my mental break was, hey, like let's start. And I did. I started utilizing the gym more, started to work out more. And throughout various months and years, as that continued, that has been my continued momentum builder. Where then in around 2000, only a couple years after that, about 2014 or 15, I was at a point in the corporate world with what I did where I saw myself, like just learning everything I could. I started taking a lot of that mental strength that I started building up on myself, and I started to say, hey, I have control over my own destiny. And I think that was the first part that had me realize that had an entrepreneur mindset. And so that's when I decided to go out on my own. Various reasons within what made me shift that perspective and finally take the leap. But I did, and I started to grow my business surely and steadily. And my wife finally came back as a girlfriend at the time. Now we're happily married. We have 2 kids and one more on the way, which led me to my second rebrand period just, about a year and a half ago, my second evolutional period in my life where having kids changes you. You start to have a different mindset around things, do different things. And there was this correlation between where I was at in business and the mindset shift that needs to take place in business and growing a family. And those were both happening at the same time. And I didn't really know how to respond to it. I was getting burnout. Funny enough, I wasn't really going to the gym anymore. I wasn't going on for runs because I just didn't feel like I had time with the schedule with my family, and my family just subconsciously seemed more like a unfortunately a burden because my business was my baby. That was the thing of me feeling seen and heard. Um, and I had to go through this period of self-reflection where I realized that I was still running my business out of fear. I was still running my business out of what other people thought success was, what going after an invisible number of money that I knew eventually would get to a point where it would never be good enough. That money is just going to keep going up. And so I had to say, all right, well, what's really important to me now? Who really sees me and hears me is my family. And so I had to do a very big self-reflection period and start bringing things back into my life that I somewhat took for granted and lost, like going to the gym, going for runs, going and meditating, being more present around my family. And those in themselves actually led me to a point in my business where it was actually what I consider a KPI, and it's where I developed my 3 C's of branding. I'm a branding guy at heart. That's what I do. Didn't really bring that up. I worked as a designer. I worked as a developer in large corporations with the Phoenix Suns to Pearson Education before I went out on my own. And I started working with athletes because my dad was an athlete. And so kind of that intermingled of my personal self and what I was doing for a living. You know, I was trying to bring that passion in and put my why together. And then during my re-evolution about a year and a half ago and going through all that, I started to realize, hey, my tribe are these people at the gyms, are these business owners going through very similar situations with their evolution of their business and their brands. And so I kind of made an even deeper shift towards naturally just going and starting to work with people in the gym industry and gym leaders and helping them get past finding their why and building a community and helping them make it to the next level. And that's kind of where I'm at now. And I can say it's all thanks to, me really looking at myself and knowing that I'm the KPI metric and I'm a brand and I'm that person that can go out there and become a better leader to help move up different spots in not just my life, but my business.
Well, it's funny that you say all of that because I literally had a similar story where about 5 years ago, I just had a turning point in my life and I was like, things need to change. And like I was dating somebody at the time. Matter of fact, it's my new ex, is who I was dating at the time. And I didn't like where our lives were going. So I started making changes and I started drawing. And that was a big thing for me. I always wanted to learn how to draw, and I just took the initiative and decided I was going to draw that day. So I went to the store, bought stuff to draw with, and I started drawing. Been drawing ever since. But I had to get my life in order. And similar to you, like my thing was anxiety, and I wanted to have people like me. So I always was a people pleaser. I felt run down all the time. I was using drugs at the time, and it literally was tearing me apart. So I decided that was not enough for me. So I started doing everything I could to build up a business, and I decided I was going to start a business. I decided I wanted to do the YouTube channel, and I just went through that and started all of those things. I wanted to go back to school. I started going back to school. And I did all these things and it helped me get to where I was at. But then recently, I literally was going through the same thing of, I don't know where I'm going with my business. I feel like it's taking up all my time. And I was like, I have family, I have school. There's so much more I'm doing now than I was then. So everything started to build up on me. And I just told my editor last night, matter of fact, that I was like, I'm going to take a break. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And she was like, no, just think about it for a little bit. Let's talk about it. But I needed more time with my kids. And I needed more time doing the things I know I enjoyed. And when I started this, I enjoyed it a lot. But then it literally started feeling more like business, and it wasn't fun. I was having to learn all this new stuff. Like I had already other new stuff I was learning, and it just got to be a lot, and I was getting burned out a lot. And I didn't know what it was at first, but it was literally that same story where I was just like, it's too much. And I didn't know where I was going to go. And then I watched a few videos on YouTube, meditations and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, I can do this. So I decided, I was going to take my time and do like one day a week instead of all week. And just like it was building up on me. So I decided to do like one day a week instead of all week. And then I was like, spend more time with school, spend more time with your kids. And I literally had that conversation last night. So that's wild that your story is so similar. I literally just didn't know what to do.
Well,
But I think I have a handle on it now.
yeah, and there's nothing wrong. What I've seen is that it's an ever growing process. I think we all evolve as people. I think we all evolve in the directions that we want to take, and the people we want to help, the people we want to serve, the priorities we have. Not just with kids, but even with business itself. I think we all have an underlining hidden attribute that some of us just unfortunately don't see, but a lot of us are like, what is it? And it really comes down to contribution. Like, I think we all do want to give back and build this community, build a community, and less so build a legacy. Yes, I think we all want to build some sort of legacy to leave behind, but it's more of like, hey, like we want to contribute to this world like in a positive way. And I think we all have that underlining factor. It's just somewhat trying to find it. And even if it evolves, like I tell my wife all the time, like, hey, like, yeah, we could go out and I could feed the homeless. I could, build houses for people that are in need of houses, but I've never built a house before. I'm not a cook. Like, so like I had to figure out like what is the best way I can contribute. And when I was working with athletes, I loved it and I wanted to contribute more because I grew up in the space and I knew so much. But there was something there that was not 100% aligning with me still, that I never figured out. And it wasn't until I started bringing back some of this old stuff where I'm like, these are my people. These are the people like yourself that, are like, hey, I do want to work on myself. I do want to give back. I do like to be active and work on myself. But at the same time, I'm not just out there trying to, you know, make $1 million or make $2 million. Like, yeah, it'd be great. We all had money. That'd be fantastic. Nothing wrong with working the top line, but it's that process. And going back to your drawing and doing that, I think that's something that we all sort of slowly miss. And you may hear it in different forms, but it's the enjoying the process. Like, oh, like, okay, I learned something new. Great. Like the process of it. And I think that that's one of the reasons when I was in the corporate world, I jumped so much, was because I thought it was for more money at the time. I thought it was for more money, but after reflecting on it, was like, well, I learned the whole process and there was nothing really more I can enjoy out of that journey. And I was evolving and I wanted to move on and learn more and do more. And so I love your story about the drawing, and I kind of put that back to connection, right? Like I had to personally go back and connect with myself again and be like, okay, like who am I really? Like what do I really want out of life? Because it's harder, especially when you get to a certain point. I think you start a business and you're thriving, you're like, oh, I just have to make it to this, I just have to make it to that. And you may get to a certain point and then you're like, all right, like I worked so hard to make it here, but now I'm doing 80 million things and now I'm burnt out. Everyone says I should niche or I should, simplify. But I don't want to because I like to do all these things. But then you're like but do I really like to do all these things? And
Exactly.
I had to look at my personal values and be like, for instance, I started implementing, my next one's on this Monday, but I actually started implementing a once a month go out and work slash hike kind of scenario where it's like every Monday, the third Monday of every month. I'm like, tell my team, I'm like, I'm not going to be here past our morning meeting. I'm going out and I'm going to go for a hike, because it actually, the KPIs of being able to do that, do multiple things. If you can build more confidence and not confidence, you can build more connection in yourself, and know who you are. It's easier for you to start building connections with like-minded people, like the people that you want to connect with in your life.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. Like when I started this, I was just doing videos myself, and it was like I wasn't having, guests. I wasn't ever planning on doing, or having guests. But I was like, there's so many people out there that have a story to tell and how they made it, that could give somebody else, that push they need to go out there and do the things they need to do or they want to do, and, reach goals and meet their limits. I mean, it's just so much they want to do. I know I did, and I didn't have support really. So I had a lot of fighting and it was a mess. And so I wanted to give back to the point of, let everybody have a say in this, because I might not be able to help somebody, but someone I know might. And as soon as I started getting on like LinkedIn and stuff, it became easier and easier to run into people that I shared so much with. And their stories meant a lot to me once I learned them. And it's literally made everything so much, it made it worth it for me, because you literally had support and you had other people with like-minded goals and interests, that just, it helps you move on, and like you can get to the places that you need to get to. Like it's just very hard to do it by yourself. And so like they've made it really big for me, and helps me get through it on the hard days, really.
Yeah, and back to just life in general. Like there's this I think there's this misconception, because I think that whenever anyone grows a business, they're always like, I want to be like successful. And I think we all do this. We look at we have these certain people that we look up to. Um, and we say, hey, there's nothing wrong with looking at like competitors or looking at people and being like, having a goal. Like, I want to kind of use this as a stepping stone. But I think there's so much out there on the internet now that wasn't out there 20 years ago. It's very easy for all of us to overwhelm ourselves and not just feel like we're not living up to our mentality, but also trying millions of things. Everyone's like, "Oh, try this or do this or try that." And the next thing you know, you're at a point where you're making a decent amount as a personal brand, and then your bottom line is like out the window, and you're like, "Well, I'm just a glorified delegator now. I'm not really like feel like I'm doing anything." And you just try a million things. And I think it happens very common, especially in businesses and business leadership type roles that are at a certain point, um, just like yourself and me, where it's like, oh, I'm trying YouTube, I'm trying podcasts, I'm going out and I'm meeting people, I'm doing this, but nothing's working because I'm not really trying something. I'm hearing what everyone else is doing, and you're spending all this time and energy on all these things when it's really just like, well, let's just sit back and enjoy the process and pick one or two things that we think that would really work for who we are, and get away from that vanity metric of, hey, I need to be seen. Like I deal with a lot of gym owners that are like, funny enough, they'll be at like 500K or on their way to 1 million, and they'll be like, oh, we want to do all this YouTube and we want to do all this video marketing and do all these Facebook ads. I'm like, you don't need any of that. I'm like, you're only 500,000. You're not a multi-million-dollar e-commerce brand. Like you're just wasting money at that point. I'm like, your community is right here in a 5 mile radius. Your community is here. There's enough people in the world that you can start building here. Yeah. If you want to expand and grow later and open another location or do that, great. But don't prematurely do it and or think that you have to try a million new things just to build our community. Just really sit down and focus on who you are as a person and the types of people that you want to work with, and that's going to be your first solid metric of success. Is you're going to be happy because you're going to start working with those like-minded people, and you're going to start helping those people that you want to help, and that builds confidence, which is kind of funny enough, my second pillar is you start building confidence in your own authentic self. Back to your story and my story. um Once you start being, it's really hard to be authentic. I don't think a lot of people understand how hard it really is to be your true authentic self. I mean, I see so many people on social media that aren't their true authentic self. They're doing what everyone else is telling them to do. Um, Even the ones that lie and be like, "Oh, how to make $1 million tomorrow?" It's like, dude, you don't even know what it takes to make $1 million. Like it, like, and it's not as easy as what everyone thinks it is. Like for me, for instance, um, it's taken years of frugalness and, saving and making sure I'm making smart moves, but then mentally being able to be like, all right, funny enough, to make more money, I don't need to try to make more money. I need to help other people, and that's what's actually going to push it, because money is just an energy, and so um, it's really just the people around us in the way that propaganda pushes it that has pushed it to be such a sensitive topic, you know.
It
Um,
really is.
but yeah, I mean, back to where I was going to go with that is, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of, there's this YouTube this really big YouTuber. Her name is Vanessa Liu, and she's been out for a long time. And a couple years ago, I stopped watching her, and I think I just kind of evolved past her. And I'd watch her every once in a while, but it wasn't like I followed her tremendously. But she had a video come out the other day, and she actually uh turned off all her social media, turned off she got up towards upwards of like 8 million a year, I think. And she was speaking, she was doing what everyone thinks that they want to do, right? And she was at a point where she was like, I'm done. She's like, I had to take a year sabbatical. I let go of everyone that I was working with. I turned off my social medias. I stopped posting. I just hung out with family, and I just did this. And I really needed to find myself and my personal values and who I was. And I'm like, that's it right there. It doesn't matter how much money you make. This situation still happens to everyone, even if they're making, 100 grand a year, 50 grand a year, a million, 8 million. Just the more you make, the harder it is, because how hard is it to stop making $8 million a year, And so I think it's beneficial. It's beneficial for everyone to like, and I'm grateful now that I see it. I'm like, I'm grateful that I caught this in myself early. And I was able to work on myself early so that I could build the business and the brand that I want, more so than having an identity trap of sorts, where it's like, oh, well, like, where once I'm making 8 million, what am I going to do? Because then I will be trapped, So I give her kudos for doing that at 8 million. But
I don't think I could.
it'd be hard. Yeah.
It would be. Like that would be so hard. I mean, I'm having issues now, and I'm barely making it at this point. I just
Mhm.
can't imagine what that would be like. And that was going to be my next question: was how could you help my brand? um, I feel like I could go to you for that information. Tell me about the KPIs. Is what you said earlier?
Yeah, normal marketing metrics talk about, your KPIs, which are your key performance indicators, like what are the things that help you succeed in business. And so you'll see a lot of marketing companies and stuff do stuff like, oh, like when we work with clients and we have to bring leads in, it's all about, how many leads did you get in, or how many, if it's a production side, how many videos did you make? How many photos? Like those are like KPIs in business. But us as leadership roles, like we are the leadership. Back to when we was talking about those large corporations, it's funny that people want to be these large corporations because you know what the large corporations want? They want to be more human, you know? And so it's funny that so many people thrive to this success when those big companies try to do the exact opposite. And so I look at it as, back to my 3 C's, the three key performance indicators for any single person. If you're a personal brand, if you're trying to move up, those tangibles are always important. Like, yes, creating a brand, creating the assets for the brand, creating a website, doing any sort of marketing. I mean, that stuff's always going to be important, but it's not going to move the needle without those intangibles. Like you being able to connect with yourself and get past that burnout, like talk to yourself last night and say, I can do this. That should be a key indicator. I mean, they say that 90% of businesses fail within the first 3 years, but funny enough, if you look deeper into that study, they'll say that a lot of them fail due to the well-being of the business owners that own those businesses. So wouldn't that mean that as business owners, if we just worked on ourselves more, the strength and the positivity of the brand and the community around your brand would grow, right? And so you as a leader, for instance, growing a leadership type mentality, you have a video editor, and nothing against them. I don't know who they are, but do they match your values? Do they do things that you feel are attributed? I had a client last year, for instance, paying us. They're paying us about 120 grand a year for our services, and we had a year contract with them. And 3 months into the contract, I started to realize this client didn't match our values. They didn't match me. They were giving me anxiety again. I always joke with my wife. I'm like, man, I'd probably have to pay more in therapy than this guy was paying me. But it was hard. I had to let go of almost $60,000 in top line revenue for the company, and let him out of his contract because he wasn't a nice person. And he owned a health and wellness e-commerce brand, which I thought was even funnier because when you think about being a leader, you think about being a leader, right? I think at the end of the day, that's what makes us all more human is being, if you're a good leader, you are a brand, like you are. So back to those 3 C's, if you're building connection with yourself, that gives you that ability to start building these values, to start connecting with the people that you want to connect with. Like you'll start feeling alive. It seems like you've already really started to push that part yourself. I think that confidence is the second one. Once you start building confidence in yourself, you'll start being able to have that ability to start being more truly authentic with yourself. What does that do? Well, I'm very big on, past traumas in all of our lives affecting the way we act. I think it happens to everyone. Past traumas, being able to find those triggers and those traumas and work past them. One will help you be more authentic, but will help you get through failures, successes, struggles in your life, and it will help you build more confidence in other means. You'll start to lead people better. You'll start to build more confidence in the stuff that you put out there in the world, if it be your podcast or your ability to do that stuff. And your teammates will start building more confidence because you're leading them towards this sense of accomplishment that you feel because you guys are connected, right? And so building that confidence up will definitely help. I had an employee on during that time last year that one of our values and my values is integrity, and no ego. So I'd rather have confidence on staff than ego. Nothing against him. He was really good at what he did, but he had an ego and we had to let him go because I was like, hey, this isn't how I want to communicate with our clients. Like, we're here to be partners and work together. And so really working around those internal, not just values, but the culture and the community around it. And lastly, I would say is your contribution. Like, how are you contributing? Who are you contributing to? Like, you told me you talk a lot about, talking to other people about stories. Is that who you feel like you resonate with the most, in your life? Me, I thought it was athletes, and then I realized it was gym owners, so there's nothing wrong with that evolving and changing, but that's why I started doing podcasts. That's why I started speaking. That's why I don't do cold outreach, because I'm like, hey, like, me as a person, I contribute myself and my sense of belonging to this group of people. I'm building my community around this. And what that ends up doing is your vision and what you do starts to become eventually a group vision. You start building this vision with like your video editor or the rest of your team that you start building. And I'm not saying they do more, but they follow that same vision. They start saying, "Oh, like they're really into this. They're really wanting to change the world like you are." Down to your clients and who you talk to and who you work with. That's why I had to let that client go, because I'm like, this isn't a community. You're not part of. I think you're just not the kind of person I feel like I even feel great about promoting your products, just because if he is that kind of person, how do you feel his products are going to be? So it really comes down to that, right? Like, leadership roles play such a huge part in the growingness of brands, that we need to get out of this transactional type environment and start getting back into, and nothing wrong with making transactions and making sales and growing relationships, but you need to get back to just working with people because you want to help them, because you want to contribute to their success just as much as they want to contribute to your success.
Yeah, I think that was one of the problems I was having most, is who I was going to talk to and how was I going to get my message out, like my story out, because that was a big thing for me, was to get all the trauma I had out to show other people they could get through it. And it I started listening to everybody else and watching everything on YouTube, how to do YouTube channels and stuff like that. So I was pushing all this other stuff. So I was trying to do marketing early on. I was doing promotions. I was doing all these things. And I was like, but is it helping? Because like the whole purpose of this, when I started, was to just talk, just talk about stuff. And, it just literally went to a point of I was doing more that I didn't like, and I was just felt my brand was going under. And I was like, I'm not doing the talking that I wanted to do. And I didn't do the things I would think I was needing to do. So I was doing a lot of pushing on all this other stuff that I didn't have to get to yet. And like, once I realized that, it was the weight off my shoulders. And I just could move forward. And like, it literally helped me so much to just back up and take time and know, I'm very impatient. That's my biggest thing, is I'm impatient for real. And so I think everything needs to come to me fast, and it doesn't. Like, I can take my time and I can do everything slower. It's up to me. And that's why I thought I was losing it too, was the fact that I didn't realize I had to make the choices because it was my business. And so I was listening to like what my editor was saying at the time. And I was like, this doesn't fit with what I'm saying. And I had to take charge. I literally had to be like, no, this is how I want it, because this is my baby. And I really want it a certain way. So once I did that, she was like, okay. I was like, really? She was like, yeah, it's your business. And I was like, it is my business, isn't it? And like, it had to really hit me that it was my business that I was trying to work on and not somebody else's. And I didn't have to listen to anybody else. I could listen to myself and take that, intuition and go with it instead of not. Like I don't have to do what everybody tells me to do. I can always make the choice myself. And that was a big, step for me. And I could literally breathe more. It really took all the weight off my shoulders for the most part. And I literally just came up with that idea last night. So it's amazing we're having this conversation. Like it's just really
energy happens for energy happens for a reason, my friend. Like I feel like it's things happen for a reason. I was just talking to my my counselor yesterday. And I will say, yeah, I go to a counselor and I love it because it's the one person in my life that's going to be unbiased, and we were talking a lot about spiritual circles and stuff like that. And I'm not meaning to get too spiritual here, but and things in life that happen for a reason, and finding those moments of gratitude. But back to your point of you figuring this out last night, I think that's great. I want to, a lot of people, like you said, I'm very impatient too. I'm a very impatient guy. I know so much when it comes to coding and marketing and branding. And when I first started, yeah, I did delegate some of that. And I still tell my wife to this day, like, there are some things that I delegate that I'm not ready. I shouldn't delegate yet, or I shouldn't do, but I have to because I have 3 children now. And I do need it. So there's nothing wrong with, finding things temporary, knowing, and this is something that it finally hit me where I was like, okay, I can hire this position right here, knowing that, hey, this isn't going to be like the end all, like creative director in my business. It's just, let's just hire a graphic designer right now, or let's just hire a junior and let it grow slowly because we don't have any profits coming in that area yet. And so you look at these bigger companies that grow too fast. And you probably heard the saying, like, you grew too fast for yourself, or you grew too fast for your britches. And everyone wants to make it to that 1 million, 2 million, that 3 million, that 10 million, that 20. They see all these people online talking about make it to this, and every industry is different, but that's just the thing. Like, I'll talk to a lot of brick and mortar companies, and we work with a lot of gym owners, so they have a lot of brick and mortars. It's easier for them to make it to 1 million than it is for an online business, even an e-commerce store, because they have already the central location in their stuff is 5-mile radius, right? It's much easier for them to get clients in the door, where you're an e-com brand or an online business. You have to do a lot more marketing and pushing to reach a larger audience to get those people in. And so it's subjective. Money is subjective in that way, because it's like, oh yeah, that's just top line people. You look at most e-commerce brands, they're making 2 to 3% profit margins on their lowest. They should be making like 10, but they're making like 2 or 3. Restaurants, they bring a lot of clients in. They're like 1 to 3 million top line, and on a good night, in a good month, they're making, in a good year, 5% profit margin. So your take home is necessary way different depending on the industry that you're in. And you grow too fast, that bottom line is out the window. And the fact that you saw that early, and it's still hard. I still have the problem too, where it's like I have to take a step back and be like, all right, like, I've only been doing this for 6 to 7 years. I don't brag about my money, but we're pretty safe and solid now, because I've one of my triggers for my past is my parents weren't very good at money, and so I was a saver. And so I got to a point where I was like, all right, we're very comfortable. And I don't like things like, I don't need a fancy car. We have 3 cars in the driveway, and 2 of them are paid off, and they're from like 2012. And one of them's we just bought because we're having our 3rd kid. We had to. And I remember going in there, and they saw me and my wife's credit score, and they're like, yeah, it's 800 credit score. They're like, we're going to pre-approve you for 60 grand. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to pay like 90% of that up for, well, we pay like 90% of, so I'm like, I hate loans. I hate having this hold back on things. And so like we're we're good. And even now my wife has to be like, calm down, we're good. Look at all the stuff that you've succeeded over the past and you've done this. So that sense of eagerness, I think, is something part of that connection with ourselves that we have to continue to work on and be like, all right, like we're good where we're at. Let's just keep pushing and remember to enjoy the journey. Remember to enjoy what we're doing because we 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 should love what we do. Yes, there are circumstances where loving what you do may not have a tangible end goal and you have to shift it a little bit, but that could also be part of the evolution of a person too. But there are other times where you're like, hey, I mean, I couldn't work in mortgage insurance. I think that's boring, but other people love it. So um, now I'm just ranting, but yeah, I'm really glad that you found that now because now you're going to be able to, um, and you've taken a step back, you've moved to 1 to 2 days. I think that you will be much happier in the long run knowing you did that when you're like 60. Do you know how many business owners I talk to? They're like 20 million a year and they're like burnt out and they're like, I don't even get to spend money because I have no time. And I'm like, I enjoy watching kids grow up. Like, I'm like, I don't want my kids to be 18, 19 and disown me because they're like, my dad was never around. I want to be around during them growing up because this is the most wonderful time I feel of our lives right now.
That's how it was with my kids. Like I get to see them today, and that was a big thing for me too. Is I realized that every time I had my kids, they were just sitting there watching me on a computer for most of it, and I was like, I don't want to be that dad. Like my dad wasn't around when I was a kid, and I don't want to be that type of father. So that was one of the main reasons I stepped back. I was like, when they're here, that's going to be my time with them. And I'm going to do more playing and do more stuff because I didn't want them always thinking, well, daddy's always on the computer. He can't do anything with me because that's a hard feeling for a kid to go through. And you're
Yeah.
right. That is like the best time of our lives is, when they're little because they remember that so much more. And it means so much to them and to you. Like it benefits both, sides of it. So I had to, like, I literally had to do something. And I was like, I need more time with them. And that was the biggest reason why I decided to, to just back up some. I was like, I don't have to rush and have 1 million followers because that wasn't the purpose in the first place. Like, my whole purpose was, just to tell my story and show my art. And I stopped drawing for a while. I didn't realize like I hadn't drawn in like 2 weeks. And I was like, I drew every day. I drew many times a day. And I was like, I'm not even doing that anymore. And it bothered me because that was like my safe space, my go-to when stuff was bothering me. And I hadn't done it in 2 weeks. And didn't even realize I hadn't done it in 2 weeks, until it was like a full 2 weeks. So I drew the other day. And I was like, I love this feeling. So I want to do more of it. I forgot like all the stuff that got me to this point. I basically had stopped doing. And it was hard. And I didn't know why. And I realized it was because I'm not doing the same things. Like I got to this point. Well, now what do I do once I'm here? And it's like, I'm not even doing that big of things right now. But to me, they're big things. And so like, I was like, where do I go from here? I'm lost. And I was like, well, you're not doing all the things that got you here. And that was the things you enjoyed. And that's what got you here. Why don't you go back to doing those things? And so I was like, that makes sense. And once I told myself I didn't have to rush everything, like that helped so much. I just didn't think it was going to help that much, but it really did.
Yeah, it does. It definitely helps them. I think that kids play a huge role, and there's a lot of people out there that don't have kids, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that and that comes back to that community aspect too. Like, I think that we all thrive to want to give back in our community the best way we can. And there's ways to do it without having this agenda of, hey, let's just try to take their money. I mean, I see so much stuff out there now, and I mean, I've fallen trapped to it too, where it's like you buy something or you get something, it's a piece of crap, or it's 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 horrible. And the one correlation I see with all of it, and this kind of my superpower, is I can kind of tell how good a company is from a brand perspective and from a moral perspective based off of their marketing collateral. And it's like, unfortunately, I can, because I do it for a living, and I'm like, oh yeah, if this person didn't put much effort in the ways they want to market themselves, and that doesn't mean you have to have something beautiful. It just means that you have to have good customer service, or you have to know that, hey, I'm going to help this person, but unfortunately I can't help you because I just don't think that we would be a fit, and I'm going to give you a reference, maybe someone that has similar values to what you value, and so you have to kind of look at it. You kind of have to look at it, and it seems selfish turning people down, but at the same time, I think we all have a well-being of like, hey, like, I want to put my effort into contributing to this because this is what I'm good at. Like, what kind of stuff do you draw?
Mostly comic book characters, and people I know. I do a lot of faces. It's gotten a lot better over time. I used to draw a little bit of everything, but slowly I've just kind of moved toward just faces. So that's what I do mostly in comic book characters.
So, I'm a very big comic book fan myself. I remember when I was a kid, I actually drew comic books. I had a Scorpion Man was my guy. I made like comic number. I still have them. It was like I started my first one when I was in like first grade, so I didn't know how to like really write yet. So I'd have words just like "pal" and stuff in there, but he evolved over time, and he was like an anti-hero hero because he was a scorpion, so everyone was afraid of him. But you know, was still he was still a superhero. Um, and
Nice.
and I grew up fascinated, and I'm a very big Marvel fan now. But back to what you were saying, superheroes do bring this sense of having, for kids especially, like something to look forward to, like a contribution, like you're giving back to these kids by being able to draw these comic book characters that bring them to life and help them persevere past these situations that they're having at a younger age. And so I think that's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it helps a lot with the transition from being a kid to a grown up as well. Because, especially with like Marvel, they have a lot of characters who are in their teenage years or a little bit younger who transform into these characters over time. And you can see the different, how they are built up. Like some of them go through a tragic storylines, and some of them have it easy, but everyone has to go through that transition time to become from regular person to hero. And it always gave me a sense of justice. Like I always had a really big point of, I'm coming to save the day. And feel that builds it in kids because of comics. Like a lot of them wouldn't have that sense if it wasn't for those comics, and they mean so much to us nowadays. Like there are like our mythology stories, and they had Hercules in Greek mythology. They had Perseus. We have Wolverine and Cyclops. We have Superman, and they instill that same type of sense of morality and justice, and help everyone that you can, even if they treat you a certain way. They can learn by example, lead by example, and they're leaders because they have the power to be, to do something about it, and they do. And that was always a big thing for me with comics. Like my whole office is filled with comic book stuff. and it just makes my entire day. And I never thought I'd get that far. Like I never thought I'd have an office, and so it feels good to have gotten this far, and I can't wait to see where I'm going. So, next question, because we're running out of time. How can we get in touch with you? Because I would like to talk more with you about things.
Yeah, definitely. Well, people can definitely find us on our YouTube channel. Just at Creative. You can find us on there. For anyone that's kind of in the gym space, like if they're looking to start, building that sustainable lead flow within their business, if they're 500,000 to a million to 3 million going towards expansion, or even, franchise level marketing directors, if any of those kind of want to get in touch with us, they can go to leavethatmark.com, and we've kind of built a private podcast for them to kind of go through our 3 pillars on how they can start building that sustainable lead flow, which is 5 emails a day through their existing audience. So I definitely recommend anyone in the gym space, gym leaders, kind of check that out. Again, that's leavethatmark.com. You personally, or anyone that just wants to chat with me on the side, like I said, can just go through YouTube, comment on our YouTube, or I'm a very big fan of LinkedIn. I stick mostly to LinkedIn for most of my communication. And through that, they can just find me at Creative and send me a DM on there, and we can get to chatting.
Awesome. Thank you for being on the show. One last question. What is the next question you have for the next guest without knowing who the next guest is?
Oh, I'm gonna use a good one here. I got this one yesterday in one of my business forums. If you had to get rid of one of these 2 things, what would you get rid of? Would you get rid of books, or would you get rid of music, and why?
Oh, that's rough.
That was a hard one.
That is a hard one. Oh, my next guest is in for it. I can't wait to see what their answer is. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you so much for being on the show. Like, I needed to hear everything that you said today, and it just made my entire day better.
I appreciate it. If anything,
like
that makes my day. I appreciate that.
Like, it literally made my entire day, because I was like, I don't know. I don't know how today's gonna go. And like, you literally just was signed from the universe, and I was like, oh, awesome. It just makes me feel so much better.
Well,
So I like to end every episode with thank you for today, thank you for yesterday, thank you for tomorrow. Always remember to question your reality, and at every end there is a beginning. You have a wonderful day, sir. Please come back to the show. We will talk more. We'll push all of your stuff. So thank you for being on the show, though, for real.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, everyone, you guys take care. See you next time.